responsive they are, but I think you're absolutely right. And I think just to tie to your first point, to the point you're making now, the attack on the truth is so that people can't talk to one another with shared truths and push back against lawmakers. And that's why they're calling on, I mean, Tim Miller, they are telling Republicans to stop having town hall meetings.
Yeah, well, they are, because I guess why, right? Like, none of them
Right.
are being very deft at convincing anybody that the reality that they're living is not true, right? And so instead, I think that they're going to go into the safe media spaces where they know, how they can manipulate the conversation and try to advance propaganda. So, and I just want to throw one more thing on top of what Paul said, because I do agree. I talked to Amanda Littman, who runs Run for Something, this morning, and she's like, every time there is a purge in the federal government, their group, which encourages and helps organize people run for office, has seen an influx of people who have signed up and said they're interested in running for office. And she said that it's more now, I think in the first 3 months, than almost the entire 2018 cycle. They've almost passed it already. And so I do think you're saying this. I think that folks that are laid off from these veterans organizations, or veterans that have been laid off within the government, I think are prime people to go out and do that. And that may not be like the mass protest movement or something that people see, but it could be, as Paul points out, like individuals stepping up and saying, I'm going to run, and that having a ramification down the line.
We'll be watching. Paul Rykoff, it's an important day to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
For being here with us. Tim sticks around. The latest episode of Paul's podcast, Independent America. Is out now. Really important conversation with Senator Mark Kelly about lots of things, but including the latest standoff over Russia's war, Russia's invasion into Ukraine. Also had for us hoping to soon battle rocket launchers. The Trump administration putting off some of their very unpopular, relatively inexplicable tariffs, but just for 1 month. Looks well.
For all Americans and for all people, what matters most
please call or go online to keepitfancy.org today.
Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment. Call Coventry Direct to learn more.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
Our friends sold our policy to help with another purpose. What got me thinking? Maybe selling our policy could help with our retirement.
I was skeptical. So I did some research and called Coventry Direct. They explained life insurance is a valuable asset that can be sold.
We learned we could sell all of our policy to old people with no future payments. We sold our policy. Now we can relax and enjoy our retirement as we had planned.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse without finding out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies. Or call 1-800-513-7100. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
I told you I don't need these anymore. I have Sling.
Okay, morning. Only that sling you wanted to use on you to stay warm? This one.
No, Sling uses all the news we want in a quick and reliable manner.
And at a wonderful price.
This quick and time calls for the global news coverage that Sling provides.
The most important news at the best price. Sling lets you do that.
You look at what Doge has done in terms of cutting federal spending. There are lots of questions in terms of whether or not this is going to lead to a further slowdown. Can Doge induce a recession with all of this cutting? And what about the tariffs and the pressure that brings to bear as well?
These tariffs show wow, these tariffs are really scary. And I think you're right, we have a real possibility of bringing on a recession.
When you're losing the folks over at Fox Business, wow. I thought it was important that you see that. Fox Business on the revelation that the guy who filed for bankruptcy 6 times may not be quite so genius at running the country's economy. And it's not just over at Fox. Sarah Longwell, a longtime pollster, writes in the Atlantic today that many Trump voters who picked Donald Trump over Vice President Kamala Harris because of issues like the rising cost of living may be having some buyer's remorse. She writes this, quote, Trump voters and focus groups are showing signs that they do not believe that Trump's policy priorities are about cheaper groceries. Instead, they see him getting distracted by cultural war issues that won't actually improve their lives. Quote, I wanted a lot of change as far as inflation and the price of everything. That's Charlie, a Biden to Trump voter in Georgia, who said it in a focus group last month. Quote, so I haven't seen any real changes there. As a matter of fact, I think for me, things are worse as far as inflation. The market panic at least seems to be getting to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is granting a 1-month exemption on his stiff new tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada, specifically for U.S. automakers, as worries and fears persist that his newly launched trade war could crush domestic manufacturing. Trump did not announce what moves, if any, he will take to address the fact that the people who voted for him are still having lived experience of their bills going up, not down, because of his tariffs. During our conversation, and with me at the table, New York Times editorial board member, MSNBC political analyst Mara Gay. We started this conversation in the last blog, and I want to pull you in on this. There is a lived experience that is totally grassroots, that can't be manufactured. It doesn't come from a politician lab and get perfected with consultants and ads. And it's voter sentiment. And when you've got people calling into Sean Hannity's talk show about cancer research, when you've got Republicans showing up in ruby red districts, angry about everything from members of Congress abdicating their constitutional role as serving as a check, when you've got the federal cuts really being something that troubles people as they look so clunky and indiscriminate. And then when you see the price of everything from eggs to just about everything else go up with the trade war on the precipice, people feel bad about things.
Yeah, you know, we talk so much, as we have in over years now, about the big lie. And, you know, lately, I would say until January, that really referred to January 6th. But what I think is interesting is that as it turns out, Donald Trump lied to his supporters by telling them, don't worry, I'm going to fight for you and hurt everyone else. I'm going to hurt liberal America, I'm going to hurt blue America, I'm going to hurt the federal workers who you think of as academics and black postal workers, and they live somewhere else, they're not in your town, you don't have to worry about it, I'm going to take care of you, you're my people.
Yeah.
And actually, it turns out that that was a lie, that Donald Trump, I believe, exploited a lot of economic uncertainty and a lot of really old racial divisions and tensions in this country and hatreds. And instead, what he's done is install Elon Musk to cut with absolutely no regard to the way this impacts people's lives. And so now we're seeing, of course, the result is that even farmers in the middle of the country, in the deepest red states, are showing up to town halls wanting to know what is happening. And now Republicans telling me, I love the guidance that they were given by the NRCC yesterday. Don't have town halls.
Just don't do it.
Tell you,
But like, what are those people? I mean, they still have phones. They still have the idea that that'll stop the political outrage. It's ridiculous.
But it does raise the question. It's like these aren't popular policies. So the people around Donald Trump, and there's also another element here of how many times did we hear early on in 2016, 2017, 18 from Republicans in the Trump administration, privately saying, "Oh, we think we can control Donald Trump. We can manage him.
Yeah.
I'm here to make things to mitigate the problem." Well, I think that we saw so much of that bullishness from Wall Street, who supported him in the last election, thinking that these money managers thinking, well, Donald Trump's just going to be great. It's going to be all deregulation all the time, and it's just going to be a bonanza. I don't think that the tariffs were something that they thought were going to actually happen. So there's a lot of questions, I think, about who's been taken in at this point.
Yeah. I mean, Tim, I think the other thing that no one seemed to want to say out loud is that this instability is bad for the economy.
Yeah, I never really understood this from the money managers. Every rich person I talked to, I was like, why aren't more people making a risk-reward assessment here on Wall Street or among CEOs just about the instability of Trump, about how erratic he is? And sure, maybe you'll get a tax cut, maybe you'll get a regulation cut you like, but like, what about the downside risk of Trump? And for whatever reason, a lot of these guys just, whether it was out of greed or short-sightedness or whatever you want to give the reason, they didn't take that risk into account, and you're already seeing that start to change. I actually don't think this guy's a Trump supporter this time, but you're a Mets fan, right, Nicole?
Yes.
That's right. Your team, you might have your team on rocks. I've been playing this clip from him, Steve Cohen, hedge fund guy, donated Trump in 16, was with Christie in the primary this time. So, it's not like a liberal finance person by any means. And he was on a panel a couple days ago, and he was just succinct about it. He's like, look, if you combine sticky inflation with Trump making it worse with tariffs, with the trade wars making it more uncertain, with some level of austerity at the federal government through DOGE, fewer government spending, fewer jobs, and like you put that all together, what you have is a recipe for a very weak economy and possibly even worse than that. And I just think that anybody who is looking at what is happening rationally right now, I think there's particularly among the finance set, they're kind of starting to come around to the reality that like they're not going to get just the cookies part of Trump. Like they're going to get all the bad stuff too. And unfortunately, it's going to be a lot of regular people that end up suffering because of it.
I love that you had to point me to my team then, or making comments about something other than how spring training's going and how Juan Soto's doing. But I will go look for it. I will go look for it. I need both of you to stick around. We're just taking a break. I'll be right back.
As a cardiologist, when I put my patients on a statin to reduce cholesterol, I also tell them it can deplete their CoQ10 levels. I recommend taking Cunol CoQ10. Cunol has 3 times better absorption than regular CoQ10. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Hi, glad everyone's here. Let's get started.
When they want to squeeze up,
I'm going to share my screen. Okay. I'm sorry about that. I'm excited to share.
they want a squeeze up.
Hey guys,
deliciously delectable, delectables.
Squeeze up.
This land we love belongs to all of us. Yet not everyone is treated equally. Right now, millions of Americans are fighting for the things promised to all by the Constitution. Freedom, justice, equality. You can help by joining the American Civil Liberties Union today. So please, call now or go online to myaclu.org to become a guardian of liberty. Your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, helps protect our democracy. With support from people just like you, the ACLU is leading the fight to protect our civil liberties. Will you join us? Call or go to myaclu.org today. Use your credit card and you'll receive this special We the People t-shirt and more to show you're part of the movement to protect the rights of all people. Together, we can ensure that this land continues to belong to everyone. Because we the people means all of us. So please, join us. Call or go online to myaclu.org today.
Got one more in.
With USPS ground advantage, it's like you're with us every step of the way.
Right on top.
Stay in the know. Your dog, your tool. When you're a small business owner, your to-do list can be a lot.
Super helpful.
What about impulses?
Progressive makes it easy to see if you can save money with a commercial auto quote online, so you can get back to all your other to-dos.
Absolutely not.
Get a quote at progressivecommercial.com.
So, Martin, Tim points to an interesting thing that I've tried to sort of put words to for years now. The critics of Donald Trump believed him, right? Like, I don't think he's done very many surprising things in 5 weeks. They're audacious, but most of them were previewed other than the amount of power and the lack of checks that Elon Musk would have, right? But his supporters didn't really believe him. The tariffs, like, he loves tariffs. He's been talking about tariffs for years. And I think at one point, maybe over the summer, people talked about $13 avocados as a thing that wasn't inconceivable. We are now sort of on the precipice of this, and it'll hurt everybody, including all of his voters.
Yeah, I mean, that takes us kind of inside the psychology of the Trump and the MAGA movement, and I'm no expert in that, honestly. But what I will say about it is I think we are in an environment, a media environment, in which I think especially Trump voters, and we know this from research and reporting, that Trump voters, especially the lower information voters, are getting kind of, they're not getting the full picture. So we've seen TikTok videos, for example, where there are folks saying, hey, I regret my vote, I was fired, I was a federal employee. I was attracted to Donald Trump because he told me I was going to get free IVF. He told me he was going to lower the cost of groceries. I didn't really think he was going to follow through on 2025. I didn't really think that he would institute tariffs. And I think that's very frustrating, of course, for us, because we have said over and over and over again, here's what he intends to do. His advisors say this is real, this is happening. But I think there is some sense of kind of information echo chamber that's happening here.
For sure.
Right? I mean, yeah, it's different when you engage with a news story in a newspaper of your choosing. You're getting the fuller picture. And I don't think that's the way most Americans are consuming news, at least the lower information ones. And that is a big part of this story for the Democratic Party right now. And how do they reach those voters?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess Tim DeMara's point, they're not going to have to, right? They're going to go to buy 6 avocados and say, oh my God, I can take the whole family out for steak instead. I mean, to Mara's point, that conundrum may actually collide with more lived experiences that no voters like, Trump voters or anybody else.
Right, yeah. Look, Nicole, if we end up being right, and if this ends up being a S show of Trump University proportions, which is what I think most of us expect, certainly what I expect, then like that's going to do the job for the Democrats, right? There's a lot of this conversation about what tactics should the Democrats be using, and I have plenty of complaints and advice for things that they could do better to reach voters, but the people that are gettable, both in the midterms and then going forward for Democrats, aren't the people that are in red hats, right? And that is just kind of important to get your head around. Like, there's a big group of people out there that America called low information voters, are like folks who just don't read a ton of news, folks that are not highly informed about the news. It's it's a lot of working class people. It's working class white people and working class people of color, and a lot of them went for Trump because they were annoyed about inflation or annoyed about some cultural issue. And like a lot of them, I think, are unfortunately, going to meet the reality of a Trump University presidency, right? Which is that a lot of people get screwed over. And so I think that will be the best thing that the Democrats have going for them, even though it's really sad and unfortunate. And I think the other challenge, like the more long-term challenge of how they communicate with those voters better, is kind of on a different track.
It's such an important conversation, and one I'm sure we'll continue to have. Thank you to both of you. Ahead for us, breaking with decades of precedent, the U.S. is engaging in talks with a group the government has labeled a terrorist organization. We'll tell you about it next.
Sadly, windshield chips can turn into windshield cracks. But at least you can go to SafeLight.com and schedule a fix in minutes.
Sweet.
SafeLight can come to you for free. And our highly trained techs can replace your windshield right at your home.
SafeLight, SafeLight.
Don't wait. Go to SafeLight.com and schedule now.
SafeLight repair, SafeLight replace.
Your record label is taking off, but so is your sound engineer. You need to hire.
Indeed.
Indeed you do. Our advanced matching helps find talented candidates so you can connect with them fast. Visit Indeed.com/hire.
Sail through the heart of historic cities and unforgettable scenery with Viking. Unpack once and get closer to iconic landmarks, local life, and cultural treasures. Because when you experience Europe on a Viking longship, you'll spend less time getting there and more time being there. Viking, exploring the world in comfort.
I saw war, bombing, shooting. I'm worried for my future.
كتير رعب، وطبعا هلا يعني أنا بحس بالرعب الكبير. بدنا بس نعيش بأمان.
Conflict is raging across the world, and millions of children's lives are being devastated by war, hunger, disease, and poverty. We urgently need your help to reach children in crisis. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month, only 33 cents a day. We need 1,000 new monthly donors this month to help children in crisis around the world and right here at home. You can help us provide food, essentials, and life-saving medical care to children in the most need.
من حريتنا يعني بدنا نعيش زي كل الأطفال بدنا نعيش بحرية وأمان.
In the darkest times, children suffer the most. You can help by calling right now and giving just $10 a month. All we need are 1,000 monthly donors. Please call or go online now. Your donation today can help secure additional grants, which can multiply the impact of your support up to 10 times. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you the Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
وعيت على هاي الدنيا القصف والنزوح والصيانة. أتمنى أن نعود على بلادنا. شايف لك إنه هذا مستحيل.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Show them they're not alone. Please call or go online to givetosave.org to help save lives.
For plant-based healthy blood pressure support, there's one brand at Walmart that stands above the rest. It's Super Beets. Discover why more cardiologists recommend Super Beets for heart health support than any other beet brand at superbeets.com.
In an unprecedented move, the United States is holding direct talks with Hamas over the hostages still held in Gaza. That news was confirmed by the White House today and by Donald Trump just now on social media. President Trump wrote this: "To the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits, but not if you hold hostages. If you do, you are dead. Make a smart decision. Release the hostages now, or there will be hell to pay later." It comes on the heels of the end of a 6-week ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, with no extension of peace negotiations in sight. The U.S. government has never before engaged directly with Hamas, which was designated a terrorist organization in 1997. Axios was first to report news of the talks. There are 59 hostages still being held by Hamas in Gaza. They include 5 Americans. The Israel Defense Forces have confirmed 35 of them are dead, but they believe that 22 hostages are still alive. We'll stay on top of that story for you. Coming up for us in the next hour of Deadline White House, Jacob Soboroff is in the house. He'll join us at the table with his brand new reporting, extraordinary reporting, on the human face and the human costs of Elon Musk's slash and burn approach to cutting the federal government. Don't go anywhere.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome.
The struggle for equal rights in the United States has been hard fought, but even today, we're still fighting for racial justice, for voting rights, and against hate and extremism. You can help us win the fight and envision a future where all Americans can thrive by joining the Southern Poverty Law Center today. Please call now or go online to helpfighthate.org to become a friend of the center. All it takes is just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day.
We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace.
For more than 50 years, we've been defending the rights of people facing discrimination, racism, and bigotry in the U.S., and we do it all at no cost to our clients. But the civil rights movement is not just in the past, it's our movement right now.
So please call or go to helpfighthate.org and join us. When you use your credit card, you'll receive this special Fight Hate t-shirt to show you're standing up for civil rights.
The future of our country is in our hands, but it won't come without a fight. That is why we need your support today.
Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
With your support, we will overcome hate and injustice. So please call or go online to helpfighthate.org today.
This is my coffee shop. We just moved into a bigger space, brought on another employee, and ordered new branded gear for the team. It was so easy. I just chose my products, added our logo, and placed my order. Bring your own team together with custom gear. Get started today at customink.com.
What drives your business? Numbers, data, sales? Sure, but it's your people who define your business. That's why Paychex just reinvented the way to find and keep the best people. Smart, streamlined HR technology assisted by AI and our team of HR experts. Everything you need to recruit, motivate, and support your employees. Because your people are your business. Start reinventing your business at paychex.com/TV.
Okay, $1 million deal on the line. You got this. Recaps and sales meeting insights from all my team's calls? Otter AI. It's you who is man's best friend.
Otter, the AI meeting assistant.
Well, I think for myself, being a presidential management fellow, this is a 100%, merit-based program. People coming in are taking jobs that have lesser pay. They want to serve the American public, and for you to blanket statement saying the entire bureaucracy is untamed and doesn't have any tethering to anything. I mean, look at us. We're everyday average Americans that just want to serve the American public, and we're not allowed to do that.
Hi again, everybody. It's now 5 o'clock in New York. Behind every cut that the chainsaw-wielding billionaire and his team are making and bragging about are real people like that, the kind of people you'd want to be on the front lines if you wanted your government to actually become more efficient. People like the former presidential management fellow at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, who spoke with our dear friend and colleague Jacob Sobroff last night following the president's address. Real people who do real work for all of us, the American people and the American taxpayer, not because they have to, but because they have chosen to serve their country. And while we all agree that a bloated and in some cases wasteful federal government is a bad thing and we should reform that, we want cuts that are strategic and helpful and do the least amount of harm. But that's not what anyone says is happening. Another fired worker who worked at the U.S. Digital Service, the exact kind of worker you need if you're serious about what you say you're doing, pointed out to Jacob that some firings actually hinder what the administration says it's trying to accomplish.
The part that I watched you react to most strongly was when he said, the media and our friends in the Democrat Party keep saying we need new legislation. We must have legislation to secure the border, but it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
Yeah.
What bugged you so much about that?
I think the demonization of immigrants in this speech today was as disappointing as it was frightening. And the thing that bothered me is it's a multifaceted approach that we need to attack the immigration problem, and it's been an issue over multiple presidents.
Which you yourself have been working on in terms of efficiency.
Definitely. Part of it are legislative fixes, but the other part are really process and tech improvements. And by getting rid of the subject matter experts that do this work for decades and the people who have the tech capabilities, and then more importantly, the trust that you build between agencies to actually align and prioritize this work is really difficult to see. You can gut something in 5 minutes, but to get the apparatus back up and running, that might take 5 years. So it was really disappointing to see some of those comments.
She was incredible. So these cuts are counterproductive, they're cruel when they're carried out, they're inefficient, and it's ironic considering the name of Elon Musk's team, and according to a federal judge last week, it's illegal. A U.S. district judge from San Francisco said the Office of Personnel Management, which had sent out a memo directing a mass firing of probationary workers, quote, does not have any authority whatsoever, under any statute in the history of the universe to hire and fire employees within another agency, forcing the OPM to backtrack and then issue a revised memo yesterday. That one reads, quote, please note that by this memorandum, OPM is not directing agencies to take any specific performance-based actions regarding probationary employees. Agencies have ultimate decision-making authority over and responsibility for such personnel actions. That's where we start the hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. The aforementioned Jacob Sobroff is here. He's an NBC News political and national correspondent. With me at the table, former Republican Congressman, MSNBC political analyst David Jolly's here, and Democratic strategist and professor at Columbia University, MSNBC political analyst Basil Smykel's here. Jacob, this was so awesome. And it's been a long time since I worked in the federal government, but I was reminded of so many of these folks who, and I've had people on that said, the federal workforce is extraordinary, and they're used to every 4 years turning and sort of pivoting some of the mission specific changes, they're actually the best in the world at doing that because of the nature of working for different administrations. And that was just in such sharp relief that they're there to serve the public, sort of the people on the receiving end of any government service.
I loved so much spending time with those folks, not because you sort of said they provided, in terms of efficiency, they were providing what Donald Trump says that he wants to do to the government, what Elon Musk says he wants to do to the government. It was very clear to me that that's what they were already doing, and it wasn't just those four. I think I said last night, when we put the call out to say we wanted to hear from former federal workers, people who had been fired, there was such an overwhelming response. It would have filled that entire studio. We didn't have nearly enough room.
Can we go back and do that?
I would love to. I would love to, because there are so many stories of people just like those four that not only were they dedicating their life to the civil service, I think I called it the beating heart of the civil service last night, but they could have had better jobs elsewhere. They could have made more money elsewhere, and instead they left places like job offers at Netflix and being at Harvard University to spend what they thought was going to be a career in the federal civil service. And so whether it was Jesus, who was working at HUD and literally keeping an eye on the grants that were going to the localities to make sure the money wasn't misspent or misappropriated, he was saying, Trump was saying, we have an unelected bureaucracy that's allowing things to sort of run rampant. He said, look, my entire job was to respond to congressional inquiries to make sure that the money was getting to the places that the money was supposed to be. Or Catherine, whose job for the U.S. Forest Service was literally to go out in the forest and collect revenue from people who were in the park, to actually bring in revenue to the federal government. Or Nigella, who was working for the U.S. Digital Service on immigration-related issues, to make sure they weren't spending a lot of money and increasing the time it would take to reduce the backlog of people that were being sent out of the country, what the Trump administration says they want to do. Or Alex Taylor, who might have been my favorite in terms of the story, because he said he was working on critical rare earth minerals, the exact type of minerals that the president said that we needed more of. And he got fired. I think we have a clip of that. Can we watch that?
Yeah.
What are the long-term implications for research at USGS if they're firing people like you?
I think targeting early career researchers is devastating for the agency, just because the workforce tends to skew older already, and if we lose our junior staff, the institutional knowledge is at risk of not being passed down to up-and-coming geologists and other scientists. So I don't think it's going to be good for our research capabilities. I supported active research projects on identifying sources of critical minerals in the U.S. domestically. It bothers me that he's more interested in engaging in neocolonialism to get minerals from other countries rather than supporting the scientists and the researchers who are aiding the minerals industry here in America.
You're talking about Greenland.
And Ukraine.
So talk about efficiency. Talk about efficiency. He's saying we could accomplish with rare earth minerals here in the United States, or at least have a long-term research project to explore that, instead of trying to take over Greenland or to get minerals in this deal from Ukraine. The thing that united all of them, I think, is that they all felt like that the Trump administration has no idea who they're actually firing. That these firings are so indiscriminate that people who can help them, even though maybe the politics are different from the administration, as you said, can pivot to a different mission to help the administration accomplish their goal, yet they 86 them anyways.
What I thought was interesting listening to them is one, it was hard to detect what their personal political leanings were, but you could hear in all of them an expertise that would have benefited the Trump administration specifically.
Jesus said in the Presidential Management Fellows Program, which has existed for 48 years, it was started under Jimmy Carter, to literally put the best and the brightest into government. Trump was going on and on about DEI in the speech. I think it was one of the first topics that he hit. And he said, you know, he talked about air traffic controllers and doctors. But what Jesus said is, this is a merit-based program to bring people, regardless of politics, regardless of any other defining characteristics or demographics, into the government, because they're the best at what they do, period, full stop. And he just not only terminated me from HUD, but terminated the entire program, which has been in existence to bring people like that into the government for 48 years.
David Jolly, this is, I think the politics are even ahead of some of our reporting, with the present company excluded always, because he's always ahead of the reporting. But the people intuit this, right? I mean, I think the reason people are showing up at Republican town halls in Republican districts is because there is a sense that maybe these cuts are not about the taxpayers, they're not about the reforms people say they are. And hearing these stories is so vital.
Yeah, I think at its core, and what people are beginning to realize is this is not about government efficiency. This is not a war on inefficiency. This is a war on government. This is a war on the functions of government. They're trying to crush it. They're trying to break it. There's no other reason that you try to defund basically all of USAID unless you just want to do away with USAID. That's not an inefficiency argument. That's a policy argument. The disruption of coordination of public health across the globe will have significant impact. The suspension of critical medical research and scientific research will have long-term impacts. That's a war on government, a war on policy. It has nothing to do with efficiency. And so I think when we hear from displaced workers, I love what Jacob did because it got to the substance of how government's being disrupted. And I think this is critical for Democrats. We see them today highlighting the displaced worker and the unemployed, and those are compelling human stories that should be told. These are good people serving their country. But to be honest, a reduction in the federal workforce is still politically popular. And so to expect that people will move politically based on that, you're preaching to the converted. MAGA wants these people gone. But to begin to say your government no longer will be working for you is where the meat on the bone is. And I think if anything to this, there will be a latency before that's realized. There was just a VA health records contract that was terminated immediately, a 10-year contract to ensure that wherever a veteran goes in the VA system, that their health records are immediately available to their provider, right? It was ended. All of those contractors felt that this week. The veterans won't feel that now for several months. You go to the national parks, you go to scientific research, there's a latency before people realize that their government no longer works for them, and then watch out. Because then what we're seeing in the town halls, you're going to see among the MAGA population as well say, I didn't sign up for this type of chaos.
I mean, what's so noteworthy, I think, about Trump 2.0 is that in the first term, his rhetoric and many of his actions were directed at harming his perceived enemies. In a second term, all of his actions hurt everyone. I mean, the tariff war. If power is cut off of 10 American states, they'll hurt everybody in them. You can't just shut off the houses of the people watching MSNBC. The mass deportation. I mean, every small business owner who depends on a community that isn't afraid to leave their house is damaged. Everything they are doing has the impact of hurting everyone in this country, and it will be impossible to spare people that Trump thinks like him.
It is impossible to do that. If he were actually serious about reduction in government spending and efficiency, 150,000 workers leave the federal government every year through just natural attrition. You could have found a way to save money that way. Local municipalities have to do that. It's called programs to eliminate the gap. That's what they do. There are people that are charged, especially if you're head of O&D, there are people who are charged with trying to find savings. So yes, it's an attack on government, but it's also an attack on this government. What I mean by that is it's an attack on this government that used to be headed by a black man. It's an attack on this government that almost elected a black woman to the highest office in the land. It's an attack on a government that has been more welcoming and more supportive of people who have come to this country in search for a better life. So it's yes, it's an attack on government, but it's also a hostile takeover. That's what people feel. This is hostility directed toward a very large swath of the country, and that's going to sweep up everybody. It is indiscriminate. And so one of the folks in your focus group talked about pipeline. If I'm working with students right now, what am I supposed to tell them about the jobs that they can get, whether they're going into public policy or whether they're going into the nonprofit space? And I shouldn't probably say that out loud because it's against my interest, but I have to have these real conversations with students about what their future is going to look like. So it's not just about what's happening to people in this country today. He is destroying an entire pipeline of worker, of interested public servant, also of people who will bear the benefits of the service that he is cutting completely out of our ecosystem.
Did they have a theory as to why?
No, I mean, I think, bewildered, I think, was the word that came up over and over again last night. But Basil, to your point, Jesus Murillo, the presidential management fellow, said, I gotta have to look outside the government and to the private sector. During the George W. Bush administration, the NASA administrator came through the presidential management fellows program. Thousands of people have graduated through that program and have become elected officials, have become senior government officials. Nigella, who worked for the U.S. Digital Service, passed up a job at Netflix, which God knows how much more that would have paid than going into the federal government. But instead she decided to go work for the U.S. Digital Service, the precursor to Doge. You're right, like where are all these people going to go now? They're not going to stick around and try to find another job in government if they know that indiscriminately they could be fired. And there is no answer. They don't have an answer because, as I said before, they felt like, hey, maybe I still have a shot here even though all these layoffs are starting, because what I am doing is effectuating what Donald Trump and what Elon Musk say they actually want to see happen in this government.
And the reporting bears this out. The Bulwark had some reporting that there were some federal workers laid off who were excited about being part of this. They had voted for Trump and they wanted to be part of this reform system. But the twisted irony is that even people that were on board that would have rode in the same direction, because of the way the cuts happened, were axed.
I think the numbers here get really fascinating because as a percentage of federal spending, this is achieving nothing, absolutely nothing towards even balancing the annual federal budget, much less getting towards the debt. So you hear raw ignorance from a lot of the Trump White House about how this is helping to drive down the debt. No, it's not. We're talking about less than 1% probably of the entire federal budget. But then the numbers on the outside of this are really important externally because you're talking about spiking unemployment numbers in the first quarter of this year, like huge numbers, right? 200, 300,000 people possibly. And you're also seeing now what will that contribution be, the disruption of government markets into the quarterly GDP numbers. This whole idea of stagflation, the idea that we might see negative growth this quarter while we're continuing to see inflation, and the tell, and I think you and I may have discussed this yesterday, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, knows this because he's starting to float the idea about removing government data from the GDP numbers. Why? Why? Because they're about to disrupt the domestic economy and send ripples across the world stage. The only way Donald Trump survives this chaos is with a white-hot economy. Right? If the economy is white-hot for the next 18 months, people overlook all of this disruption because it's what's good for me and my family. I feel pretty good. Let's go another 2 years with Republicans in charge. If this economy gets tanked, Donald Trump's fine. He's a lame duck. He's not going anywhere. But down-ballot Republicans, you're looking at historic losses in the midterms.
I mean, I guess the only wrinkle or the only pushback I'd have is cuts at the FAA feel terrible when you're sitting in about one scary airline experience for passengers on that plane a week.
Yeah, I was just on a plane last night, and as to your point, and to that point, I was actually at a training for young fellows that want to be civically engaged. And one of the things that in Atlanta, mostly young men, but not exclusively, and one of the things that they're really talking about is how do we get trained to go and work with these agencies, work in organizations, but start hyper local. And that's one of the things that I really do wish for the outcome of all of this, that people take another look at local politics and get really engaged, because what's happening is people are starting to feel individually what these cuts are bringing to them. The price of eggs. In my beloved Bronx, there are bodegas that are selling Lucy eggs, right? Because people can't afford because people can't afford the full carton. And so when you start to see how people's lives when they have to make decisions to change their routine, to change their lives, because of what's happening in D.C., they're going to find someone to blame. And what Democrats need to do is just be right there.
How much is an egg?
Maybe it's 50 cents. Who knows?
He's already started his chicken coop.
I only buy eggs to bake.
That's amazing.
No, but it's
that's amazing.
selling
It's
eggs in
real.
little bags.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's amazing. That's crazy.
That's where we are.
It's amazing. We've sort of banned from the table all of the shorthanding of cost of eggs, but maybe we'll bring it back because the cost of one egg. Don't go. You're all leaving me. Thank you so much. Jacob Soboroff, David Jolly, Basil Smichael, thank you. When we come back, Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman will be our guest on the dangers posed by Donald Trump and Elon Musk's deep, indiscriminate cuts to the government. Alaskan white voters are increasingly outraged. We'll also talk to him about the erosion of the rule of law in his old office and what Democrats can do about it. Later in the broadcast, the United States Supreme Court finally standing up to Donald Trump and his agenda. What a majority of those justices did today to tell Donald Trump no, or niet, as he might understand more clearly. Deadline White House continues after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
When emergency strikes, first responders are the first ones in. But on outdated networks, the crucial technology they depend on is limited. That's why T-Mobile created T-Priority, the only solution built for the 5G era that can dynamically dedicate up to 10 times the capacity for first responders. T-Priority, built for tomorrow's emergencies. Ready today.
The most sacred thing in life isn't the path. It's the freedom to choose it. Freedom is the roar of one man's engine and the silence of another's. So choose, but choose wisely. Choose what makes you happy. My friends, my family, my work make me happy. This Jeep makes me happy, even though my name is
Your business needs to hire someone now. So, in addition to managing your business, you have to go through hundreds of resumes and hope for the best. Or you can go and get the best. Introducing Paychex Recruiting Copilot. It uses AI to help find potential candidates from millions of profiles, whether they're looking for a job or not. Then, it helps you get in touch and get them hired. 5 times faster than job postings. Get your own Paychex Recruiting Copilot now at paychex.com/TV.
Childhood cancer it's hard, but St. Jude has gotten us through it. St. Jude is hope for every child diagnosed with cancer because the research is being shared all over the world.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Qunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Qunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Qunol, the brand I trust.
Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment. Call Coventry Direct to learn more.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
Our friends sold their policy to help pay their medical bills. And that got me thinking. Maybe selling our policy could help with our retirement.
I was skeptical, so I did some research and called Coventry Direct. They explained life insurance is a valuable asset that can be sold.
We learned we could sell all of our policy or keep part of it with no future payments. Who knew? We sold our policy. Now we can relax and enjoy our retirement as we had planned.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse without finding out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies, or call 1-800-513-7100. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
MSNBC presents a new podcast hosted by Jen Psaki. Each week, she talks to some of the biggest names in Democratic politics with the biggest ideas for how Democrats can win again. The Blueprint with Jen Psaki. Listen now.
While we're on the subject of Elon Musk, is there anyone in America who is comfortable with him and his gang of 20-year-olds using their own computer servers to poke through your tax returns, your health information, and your bank accounts? No oversight, no protections against cyber attack, no guardrails on what they do with your private data. We need a more efficient government. You want to cut waste? I'll help you do it. But change doesn't need to be chaotic or make us less safe.
That was Democratic Senator Alyssa Slotkin slamming Elon Musk's Doge team. That team, of course, is drastically reshaping the federal government in a completely haphazard manner, which she says is putting the safety of all Americans at risk in the process. Joining our coverage, Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman of New York. He's a member of the House Judiciary Committee. We have so many things to ask you about. First, your thoughts on Senator Slotkin's points there about Elon Musk. Are you hearing some of that from your constituents?
Well, absolutely. She's spot on, as usual. The reality is that Elon Musk does not himself know what they are cutting. So how in the world does Donald Trump know? Does the White House know? Or do House Republicans, Senate Republicans know? Nobody knows. When you look at the top 12 line items in this so-called wall of receipts, 10 of them prove to be false, incorrect, or completely misleading. So he's not cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. He's just cutting whatever he wants, probably based on keyword searches that he does through his algorithm. What he's not cutting, of course, is his own $13 billion of government contracts. There's certainly no waste, fraud, and abuse there, according to Elon Musk. And he's jeopardizing the security of our national security as well as personal identification information. And I think Senator Slotkin's exactly right. Come, let's talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. If you can use technology and identify it, and we can look into it to determine whether or not it is wasteful, is fraudulent, abused, or we can make things more efficient, we want to do that. But that's not what Elon Musk is doing. It's just a massive corruption scheme.
When you see the cuts across the government, especially in the Department of Justice where you served, they seem to fall into three buckets. Political retribution, straight up, firing all the prosecutors involved in prosecuting the January 6 cases. Political pressure, where prosecutors like Danielle Sassoon butted up against Emile Bove because there was no factual predicate for dismissing the case against New York's Mayor Eric Adams. And then these just indiscriminate slashing and burning, basically gutting USAID, and they've targeted or have designs on doing the same for the Department of Education. What is the political practice that Democrats will turn to push back against all three?
Well, we have to take different mechanisms for different issues, because I do think you're right. At the DOJ, at the FBI, this is really Donald Trump's revenge and retribution against those organizations, those agencies of accountability that try to hold him accountable for his criminal acts. And he is going to go get back at them. As it relates to other things, USAID you mentioned, but I mean, think about Social Security Administration, where there are proposed 50% cuts. You think about HUD, where they're talking about getting rid of every local and regional office. You hear about veterans and cutting 80,000 people from the Veterans Administration. These cuts are not just to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, and they won't just reduce the employee base. They are going to affect the services that every American who receives benefits from each of those agencies, and there are hundreds of millions that they receive. And so this is not an effort to actually weed out anything. This is an effort to essentially cut as much as possible from working Americans, from middle-class Americans, in order to make room for tax cuts for Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and other billionaires. It's very simple. That's what they're going to do. And as soon as Americans start to feel it, then I think you'll see even more of an outrage and uprising. But it's enough just to know that the Republicans' budget that was passed in the House cannot be enforced and met without cutting hundreds of millions of dollars from Medicaid. That's the math. So they can say whatever they want to say. Donald Trump can gaslight all he wants, as he did last night. Blatant lies and misleading information. But the reality is about to hit Americans.
And it feels like that isn't lost on the American people. And the second Trump presidency seems so distinct from the first in the indifference to the suffering of all Americans. I was talking to Basil Smyple in the last conversation about Trump's at least pretend efforts to buffer his own, who he perceived to be his people or his voters, from his policies and practices. In the second Trump presidency, his policies almost indiscriminately target the kinds of people he pretended to speak directly to throughout his entire political ascent. Why do you think that is?
Because he's not running again. He lied to the American people. He promised the American people that he was going to help middle-class Americans. He was going to lower the price of eggs. He was going to lower costs. Since he came in 6 weeks ago, all he has done is hiked costs. Eggs are up 15%. Inflation is up. Gas is up. And now he's putting tariffs on our allies, our close trading partners, which is going to increase prices even more. Prescription drug prices. He undid all of the benefits that President Biden and the Democrats implemented to lower prescription drug prices. And he is now cutting disdainfully and cruelly, to your point, federal employees all over the place who are hardworking patriots that are doing the essential work to provide essential services to Americans. He lied on the campaign, pure and simple. And what he is doing now is pure corruption and revenge. Those are the two things that he's focused on. It's a get rich quick and get out of jail free presidency.
I can't have you here and not ask you about the story that I think most of our viewers first came to know you from, and that is Trump's animosity for Ukrainian President Zelensky. You tweeted this, quote, "Trump will not give military assistance passed by Congress to Zelensky until Zelensky agrees to Trump's demands for $500 billion in back payments to Trump in return for nothing." Sound familiar? Quote, "I want you to do us a favor, though." Just take me through your analysis, legal and sort of geopolitical, of what it means that Trump is halting all intelligence sharing between the United States and Ukraine at obviously a vital juncture in the war, and that Trump is talking only with Vladimir Putin about ending the war in Ukraine, at least until the Oval Office meeting that they seem to sabotage on purpose.
You know, Nicole, what we've learned about Donald Trump is that you cannot pay attention to what he says. You must pay attention to what he's doing. So he will say whatever he wants to try to reach peace, as he says. All he wants to do is reach peace. But when you look at what he's actually doing, he is strong-arming Volodymyr Zelensky again to agree to a lopsided deal that will give part of Ukraine to Russia. And in order to coerce him and extort him to do that, what is he doing? He's stopping intelligence sharing, which has been absolutely essential to defending Ukraine in this war. And he's stopping offensive cyber attacks and cyber security against Russia. Those two actions together are behind the scenes. No Americans can see what he's talking about, but they have a dramatic impact and they significantly affect the dynamic between a dictator, Vladimir Putin, and a democracy in President Zelensky. And it's very similar to what he did in 2019 when he withheld essential military assistance from Ukraine until President Zelensky announced an investigation that might have hurt Joe Biden. It's the same extortion where he is taking Vladimir Putin's side, he is parroting Russian propaganda, and it is at the expense of President Zelensky and Ukraine. And it's going to have long-term impacts because China is watching. And if we yield to Russia dictatorship, you can bet that Vladimir Putin is going to move forward and China will move into Taiwan very soon.
Why do you think he's capitulating so completely, so quickly, and so publicly to Putin?
That's the $64,000 question, Nicole. And if you look at the last 9 years, and starting, frankly, when Putin and Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help Donald Trump. And ever since then, he has taken Vladimir Putin's side, including over our own intelligence community in 2018. He has been sucking up and bending the knee to Vladimir Putin in ways that do not make any sense from anyone, a president of the United States, or whatever your foreign policy is. And when you look at how aggressive he is with Israel in the Middle East in supporting them and going after Israel, our democratic allies' enemies, and then you look at how much he's placating our democratic allies' enemy in Russia, something doesn't add up. And I don't know what it is, but it just does not make any sense. There has to be something there. I don't think it's just repayment for the 2016 election, but we don't know yet.
Congressman Dan Goldman, thank you for your time on all these issues today. It's great to see you.
You too. Thank you.
When we come back, the United States Supreme Court rejecting Donald Trump and his slash and burn. Majority of Supreme Court justices ruled today to force Donald Trump to follow the law. That story's next.
Inflation and economic uncertainty have affected all of us. But if you have a structured settlement or annuity, J.G. Wentworth can help you get a lump sum of cash now in exchange for some or all of your future payments. J.G. Wentworth has helped individuals get over $290 million in the past year alone. So why live month to month in these uncertain economic times? Call J.G. Wentworth today at 877-CASH-NOW and get the cash you need now from your structured settlement. Call now.
Hate and extremism in the United States are on the rise. In fact, there are more than 1,400 hate groups in our country today. Groups that vilify others for their race, religion, sexual orientation, or gender identity. And extremist groups that spread dangerous conspiracies and encourage violent acts. This is a dark chapter in our history, but it can be rewritten. Since 1971, the Southern Poverty Law Center has been fighting hate and defending justice and equality in the U.S. But we can't do it without support from people like you. Please call now or go online to helpfighthate.org to become a friend of the center. For just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, you can support the fight for justice. In recent years, hate crimes against Black, Jewish, and LGBTQ Americans have nearly doubled across the U.S. This violence has no place in a just society.
Hate and extremism are dividing us like never before. But together, we can protect our communities and continue providing no-cost legal help to those impacted by hate violence.
So please call or go to helpfighthate.org and give just $19 a month. When you use your credit card, you'll receive this special Fight Hate t-shirt to show you're standing up for civil rights. The fate of our country is in our hands. We can and will build a more just future, but it won't come without a fight. That's why we need your support today.
Southern Poverty Law Center staff are in the courts defending freedom and in the halls of power advocating for change and working hard to prevent recruitment into extremist groups throughout the United States. Together, we can push back against this wave of hate and extremism.
Become a friend of the center today. Call or go online to helpfighthate.org right now.
Waterline broke. Replacing could cost thousands. Not covered by homeowners insurance.
Honey, wake up. Here's Tom Lucen, CEO of HomeServe.
A plan from HomeServe pays for the covered repair cost for water lines, and we send a qualified contractor. The American dream of owning a home doesn't need to be a nightmare. Sleep well with HomeServe.
Plans from HomeServe start at just $4.99 a month.
Call 1-800-355-9395 or visit homeserve.com.
Men, how many bathroom trips are you making each day? Try Super Beta Prostate Advanced, the #1 selling formula in its category. Made with Prostafend, a triple action blend to help reduce urges to urinate. Find it at Walmart or these retailers.
Want the effects of Viagra, but faster? Meet Rose Sparks. They contain sildenafil and tadalafil, but Sparks dissolve under the tongue. Dissolvables work faster than old school pills. Connect with a medical provider at ro.co/sparks.
Today, the United States Supreme Court did something rather remarkable. At least it seems remarkable to us in this year 2025. It said no to Donald Trump. In a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court justices rejected an emergency application filed by Donald Trump's Department of Justice and held up the power of a federal judge who had ordered the administration to pay $2 billion to USAID contractors for work already completed. Mere hours after that ruling, the federal judge in question ordered the administration to file a status report by 11 a.m. tomorrow on how it plans to comply. On the Supreme Court's decision, from our own Deadline Legal blog, this reporting, quote, the divided high court action marks a significant early victory for judicial power over the new administration in the frenzied emergency litigation that has dominated Trump's second term. But lower court litigation will continue in this case that could come back to the justices as they grapple with how to respond to Trump's attempts to bolster presidential power across several cases that the High Court could weigh in on soon. Joining our conversation is former Acting Assistant Attorney General for National Security at the Justice Department, now lucky for us, an MSNBC legal analyst, Mary McCord's here, plus former top official at the Department of Justice, MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissman is back. They are the co-hosts of the MSNBC podcast, Main Justice. So happy to see both of you. Andrew Weissman, to you first on today's ruling.
Well, I'm going to pour a little bit of cold water on this because I feel like we're all a little bit
like Stockholm syndrome in that, yes, it is good news. It's a 5-4 decision and it upheld what the district court was doing. But when you look at what actually happened, one, there are 4 justices who actually were in dissent, who I don't even understand their dissent and what their argument is, or even why they had jurisdiction to hear this case. So that's 4. All they needed was 1 more. And this is a very limited ruling. As you note, it's going to eventually make its way back. If it's not in this case, there are a whole slew of cases having to deal with this issue of the power of the president. And finally, just to focus on the dissent for a moment, where there are 4 justices, they frame this in almost a Fox News way, pretending that this is just a district court who is out of control, who is ordering the president to do something that she thinks is a good or he thinks is a good idea, when in fact, all this is about is congressionally mandated funds for USAID, and the issue is whether the executive had sort of followed all of the right procedures. So yes, it's good news, but I mean, it's a really slim good news at issue here.
I'm so happy to pass the cold water bottle to someone else to pour all over the shards of hope that we try to find out of our country's politics. Let me do this for our viewers, Mary. Let me just tell folks how the justices decided this today. So Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett joined the 3 Democratic appointees in the majority, while Republican-appointed Justices Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh dissented from